Welcome to Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast. Learn firsthand from business owners who've built successful ABA businesses. Utilize proven techniques and strategies to help your practice thrive. This is Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast with Jonathan Mueller.
Lupe Castaneda is the owner of Behavior Pathways, LLC. He's been in the ABA field for 30 years and a BCBA since 2002. He's owned 2 ABA practices and currently works full-time as a BCBA in the schools while maintaining a private practice. He's also the founder of the ABA Clinic and Practice Owners LinkedIn group, which is almost 5,000 members strong. And he helped start a local group for behaviorists, which is now a SIG for the Texas Association for Behavior Analysis. He shares his enthusiasm for our field as an adjunct instructor at a local university. Lupe, welcome to the pod.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, this is quite an honor. Thanks, Jonathan.
Hey, the honor is all mine, Lupe. And so for those of you who are on our YouTube channel, you got to see Lupe's shirt. It literally is just this red shirt, screaming fire engine red, and in white letters written across his chest, it says, "Behave." Is there a story behind this shirt, Lupe?
Oh, yeah, there certainly is. I kind of borrowed this shirt, this concept from about 15, 20 years ago, attending at a conference, a TXABA conference, Texas Association for Behavior Analysis in the Dallas area. And so one of the SIGs that were actually the University of North Texas, where I, got my training, they were selling shirts. They were green, the green shirts with "Behave" on it. I said, I like that shirt. I bought one that year, and I think I wore it for about 5 or 6 years until I could no longer wear it, right? But it has other meanings as well. I think it's useful in some regards. I wear it out in public, and I find it as a way to strike up a conversation. Hey, what is this? And of course I'll get some comments and so forth. I'll usually follow by, hey, my wife makes me wear this before every time I go out, in public. So, but really the shirt, on the back of the shirt, it says Behavior Analyst and then my website. And the reason I wear that out in public when I'm with a client, as you can imagine, is that, hey, sometimes our clients, have some difficulty with challenging behaviors out in public. And then they see this guy, this man, maybe with a parent and so forth, trying to deal with a situation that is occurring at that time. So get some really awful looks, some whispers, and even in some cases, potential, dangerous situations. So I love this. It gets, it gets to the point. Behave, but on the back, it does serve a purpose. Behavior therapist, behavior analyst is what it says. So that's the story behind that.
I think was it Mike Myers in one of his skits in Saturday Night Live, or Austin Powers, when it's like behave, and there's like that connotation that goes through my mind. But you know what, the other connotation, until I got into the field over 10 years ago, I had no idea that what we do as human beings every second of every minute of every day, we behave, we engage in behavior.
Yes.
I mean, even speaking is a verbal behavior. I had no idea. And so I love that you're helping the rest of the world understand that we're all behaving. And in whatever way that is, no judgment, but we're behaving, right? And our behavior can be shaped.
Respond, but to me, behave sounds cool. And I may take you up on that Mike Myers, episode there. So yeah, that'll be my next round of shirts.
Nice. I love it. But, Lupe, you started your career as an adapted physical education specialist in Arlington, Texas ISD. And I mean, you were a PE teacher for kiddos with disabilities. And that's just, I'm floored. And that's extraordinary, man. And can you share a story about a kiddo you worked with way back when?
Oh, yeah. I remember. It was actually twins, right? So I got to serve them in the capacity of adapted PE in school. And I served them when they were, probably 4 years old, and I got to see them all the way through graduation. Now that's pretty awesome, to see that. And these were the coolest twin boys. ever, and they were severely impacted by their disability, by their autism and so forth. But, this APE, we started off with that, right? And of course, APE is also associated with Special Olympics. And then you have these cool special baseball leagues and soccer leagues. So these twins went on to play not only in Special Olympics, but they participated throughout their educational career in baseball and in soccer, as well as Special Olympics. I would certainly encourage any BCBA or anyone in our field to just go do that. I did it for about 6 or 7 years, and it was the best experiences, ever. And one thing is that I did publish research in that area, and it was a qualitative study, and I interviewed parents of kids with disabilities and asked them basically, how does it feel to have your kid participate in a sport? Did you ever think about, that your kid would be able to participate in a sport? And so that was a really nice, for me, opportunity to get to know families, collaborate with families, and see the families with their kids in these community settings, and then watch the smile on not only the kids' faces, the smiles and the tears from the families. So that was a wonderful experience that I did early in my career, and I will never ever regret doing that.
Wow. So what was parents' answer to how does it feel to have your kid participate in sports?
Oh, they would have never thought. This did not exist. This was about, there were a couple of variations of the baseball. Challenger baseball is the one that was one of the original that is associated with Little League baseball, right? So I coached as an undergrad Little League baseball, and I said, hey, that's I know this sport. Why not take this to the kids out, with disabilities that don't have these opportunities? But the biggest comments from the parents were, I never would have believed my child had an opportunity like this. And then, of course, we did soccer as well. So very powerful. And that was very influential in my career. And, leading into, here I was, this APE, fresh out of school, adaptive PE specialist. And then I started getting kiddos on the spectrum, right? Severely impacted by their autism or other disabilities. And it's like, man, there's got to be a better way to teach these kids other than having lots of fun, which, then naturally that's what I do with the kids. But I had to find more effective ways to teach those kids, have them, to be able to sit and wait for a turn and, participate in group. I said, there's got to be a way. I didn't learn that as an undergrad in special ed or PE, right? So that's what I discovered. After I finished my master's there, I discovered the behavior analysis department at UNT, just down the road from, Texas Women's, where I got my master's, And once I started that coursework, it's like, there you go. That's the secret sauce right there. This is the way I need to be able to teach these kids effectively.
Oh,
So
and give
very
them
powerful.
these like life-changing experiences. That's amazing, Lupe. I volunteer for all my kids' teams as a coach. I call myself an ass coach, assistant coach. So I have all the time to do all the planning and everything that comes with it. But one of the things that I'm doing this upcoming winter is volunteering with an adaptive sports, a Special Olympics feeder program here in Colorado with kids. And it's actually really cool because, not only do they get to learn skiing, but they actually pair up with a typically developing kiddo. So one of the kids I'm going to work with has Down syndrome, and I want to get my kids involved as sort of the neurotypical. But it just feels that that's part of the way of, yes, let's work with and support kiddos with IDD, but let's also reshape our world, right? And make our world understand that like we can adapt the same. Like that feels important to me. You use the term, Lupe, compassionate care. And you and I both share like a deep and resonating passion for this idea of compassionate care. And there's a specific term actually that I've heard you describe around bidirectional relationships with families. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, actually, I borrowed that term from, of course, LeBlanc Sellers and Eli's book, right? The meaningful relationships, sustaining meaningful relationships as a supervisor and mentor. So I saw that, and they talked about, bidirectional feedback, meaning that, hey, we should not, as behavior analysts, I think, and this is And my behavior has been shaped over the years by interacting with people, with parents and with teachers from other fields and professionals from other fields and so forth. Bidirectional relationship, the way that I interpret it is that, hey, I'm not the expert. You're the expert for your child. Yes, I can guide you and assist you in coming up with a plan, right, for to be most effective for your child, according, and I certainly welcome feedback from the parents and from others, and the feedback that I'll provide to parents or other professionals is like, okay, I understand what you're trying to say, and then I'll try to explain it behaviorally, what is happening in plain English terms as well, so bidirectional feedback, even the supervisory relationship, I think is extremely important. I think we need to demonstrate our vulnerability to our trainees, right? Our supervisees. I think, hey, we're not perfect, man. I've made many mistakes over the years. But one thing in particular that I remember, another story, sorry, but I've got a lot of stories over the years, but I was a Special Olympics coach, right? I became the head Special Olympics coach for my first district. And here I am. We're preparing. I've got about 50, 60 kids that I've got to enter for specific events in the annual local Special Olympics. So here I am thinking, okay, I'm just going to make all these decisions myself. And there was one kid in particular I remember, and I worked with her and in APE and so forth. And I learned quickly that she suffers from a seizure disorder. So I'm thinking,
Mm.
in the past, I'm thinking, well, looking up, they had entered her in the 100-meter dash. And here I am thinking, man, 100-meter dash in this heat, I'm really concerned about that. So I entered in the 50-meter dash. A couple of days later, when it was time, when we announced the events that the children would be participating in, I got a call from a parent, thinking, and they were basically saying, how dare you, do this? I tried to explain I was concerned about the child's safety, but the parent, little old me thinking I'm the expert. I know these kids. I know what's right for them. No, it was the parent, indicated, look, she's been participating in the 100-meter dash for the last 4 or 5 years. Why are you gonna downgrade her basically to a 50-meter dash? And that I think that is how a lot of my behavior did get shaped by those people that I interacted with. But I think that's an excellent example of making sure that we do have this bidirectional relationship with others, whether they be a parents, whether they even be the client themselves, if they're able to communicate that to us, right? But especially other professionals, especially nowadays, I think. But that's just a clear example. And that my behavior, like I said, has been shaped over the years. But at the same time, you talk about compassionate care, right? That's a hot topic in our field right now. And I truly do think we need to adhere to that. We need to learn about that, to ask questions, and then to definitely support that directional feedback.
Mm. You've spoken with such true wisdom, especially as you describe like the humility, right? Of listening to parents, getting that bidirectional feedback, and then using that to shape your behavior. And that's so important in turn to show to supervisees, right? And to build that.
Yes.
And tell me, because you supervise aspiring BCBAs at UNT, University of North Texas, like and elsewhere. Like, what is the biggest gap that you see now in BCBA education and supervision experience that you intentionally try to fill as a supervisor?
Yeah, I think the biggest gap is just time, lack of opportunities. I do supervise some individuals from University of Texas, San Antonio, about to start with Texas A&M San Antonio, bringing them into the school system, right? And so there is just a limited amount of time. And I think, several of the researchers in our field, like LeBlanc et al. And, Eli Kazemi, some of the big names in our field really do talk about that. How do you fit all of what they need into a program, a master's program, right? So one of the things that I see is uh, lack of opportunities. I know that one of the universities that I do take in that I do work with their particular students or grad students, they have a rotation system, kind of like clinicals, where
Mm,
a medical professional would do
mhm.
rotations. So they do a clinical rotation, they do an in-home rotation, they do a school rotation. You know, I think that is probably what needs to be done. And in fact, any trainee that I'm supervising, I'm encouraging them. Hey, you're going to get this perspective, but I also encourage them to go look for a provider, maybe in a clinic, maybe that provides in-home services or community-based services and so forth. I highly encourage them to seek other opportunities. So I think maybe the lack of opportunities in different settings, even though that is what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to provide different experiences for our trainees. And often, if they're working full time in a clinical setting or even in an in home setting with one provider, that's all they're getting, right? They're getting great supervision there, but they're not exposed to the school setting or to the community setting or what have you. And I think that's so critical in the development of any new BCBAs. I know I've got multiple experiences in various settings and with various supervisors, colleagues, etc. So that I think was definitely fundamental for me to learn about ABA in the various settings. So I think that's the biggest concern, just the time to provide those additional settings, those varied settings.
Yeah, I mean, because we talk all the time as a field about generalization for our kiddos, right? So the exact same thing, to your point, applies to generalization in delivering services across different settings. Well, the other thing that strikes me as you describe this, it's unnatural instinct to lean into collaboration in our field. Now, as human beings, we lean into it, but our field has
Right.
just felt like, there's for whatever set of reasons, but it's felt unnatural lean into collaboration. And yet you've done just that. And in getting to know you, I've seen that. And I mean, look no further than the LinkedIn group you started, right? With 5,000 members,
Yeah.
ABA clinic and practice owners. Like, what was a seminal experience in your life, Lupe, that taught you the importance of collaboration?
Well, starting off in the school district, and going to school at UNT while I was working full time as an APE specialist, right? I started working with kids on the spectrum, and in fact, I kind of, I worked myself into a position, one of the first positions as a full time BCBA in a school system in Texas, right? Only because I had started the coursework at UNT. So I was on the school district side. I started attending ARD meetings, IEP meetings is what they're typically called across the country. But then I was on one side of the table, the district side of the table. And then, of course, you'd have a BCBA. Sometimes it was one of my colleagues
Mm.
as the family advocate. Now, talking about, an uncomfortable situation, especially if it was an uncomfortable situation, with the school district or the parents, and so forth, that will teach you right away about collaboration right there, because these are my colleagues, some of them were my classmates, so I took it upon myself from the very beginning. Okay, I've got classmates that were a year ahead of me in a different cohort and so forth. I'm going to bring you guys into my district to help me with training. I'm learning at the same time. We are providing an excellent service for the teacher staff training, and even for the students and so forth, for the children. I think from that very beginning, those first years of sitting on one side of the table, and the school side of the table, and then just say, you know what, you guys come on in. I invite you, because a lot of times, across the country, school systems have difficulty. Um, they have difficulty collaborating with private therapists, right? Especially
Mm.
behavior analysts. Part of that is our fault, right? But still, I think that that helped me realize, like, man, I'm going to see this guy in class next week. I don't want to be that person totally defending everything that one party does versus another. So, I think that was a good early learning experience. And from there, I learned to collaborate, because eventually, after I left the school system, I was on the other side of the table as an advocate for the families. And the way I approached that, based on my experiences from the school perspective, is I did not consider myself an expert, right? It's like, yeah, I
Mm.
know analysis, of course, but what are your thoughts? I mean, because now I'm on the other side of the table, instead of coming in as the expert model, which we used to do years ago. we're coming in, and now we're at the collaboration model. I've done that ever since. I've been to, probably after that first district, I've been to 3 other districts and consulted with others, with many others. And so if I'm, currently right now, if I learn that one of my students has a BCBA, and receiving ABA services privately, I'm going to invite that person to come meet with us. How can we help this kid generalize all those skills that he's learning in your clinic or in your in-home program? We need to work on generalization into the schools. So immediately I'm inviting, definitely. And I think that is what has worked for me over the last 30 years.
Yeah, let's double click on that, Lupe, because in a recent conversation you and I had, you gave me this light bulb moment for that. For like 15 years of a child's life, the school is actually the natural environment. So tell me more about how can ABA providers better work with schools and access this natural environment?
I think that relationship, and I would hope. I know around here in the San Antonio area where I live, we're seeing more and more opportunities for BCBAs. There are, at least 3 openings right now in the San Antonio area with different districts. But I would hope that we can work. Consider the child when we're planning for this child. What is going to be best for this child? I mean, as recently as just a few weeks ago, I was a private. I provide some private consultation for families and for a clinic, of course. And then school starting, so we had to talk to school personnel, and we took it like, hey, let's just open up a discussion. How are we going to help this particular kid be successful in your area? For us as BCBAs in the private sector, I would invite you. If there's a BCBA, contact that BCBA, reach out that BCBA. And even if there isn't a BCBA, reach out to the, special ed administrators, to any administrators on the campus and so forth. Reach out to them and say, hey, we're working with, little Johnny, 25 hours a week. He's been coming to us for about 6 months. We've seen some great gains, but we'd like to see him, generalize those skills,
Mhm.
and without us dictating that. It's more of an
Mm.
invitation. I'd like to collaborate with you. What are you guys doing there? What can we do in the home environment or in the clinic also that will benefit our child, so that we know our client, so that we know what to work on for generalization purposes. Earlier today, I was where we've got part of the requirements for Texas Association, Educational Association, is to consider what's called in-home training for a child diagnosed with autism in the schools. And they look into one of their critical um, goals for that in-home training parent program is to generalize skills from the school to the home, from the home to the school, from the school to the community, the community to the school. So it's varied across all settings, and the purpose is to help that child and the family learn how to help teach that kid generalize those skills across all settings. So that's built into what we do here in the Texas Education Agency.
Mm.
But I would invite, once again, private practitioners to reach out to your schools, and not just, I guess, invite yourselves for the purposes of sharing your expertise, right? So that's the way I think can be most beneficial for the family, the school, and especially the child.
Wow, I love that. The whole idea is like, yeah, don't just pick up the phone, call a special ed director and say, "Hey, I'm a BCBA and I've got this expertise. You want me to do a training for you?" Which is almost,
Right.
I
Yeah.
totally appreciate where like that could be perceived as, "Oh, I'm better than you are." Is there like a secret handshake or something with a special ed director outside of just the clearly, like, I love how you put it. I'd love to collaborate with you. I invite you. Like, can we think about how to serve this child? But is there a secret handshake that really that you found really works in getting special ed directors' ears?
I think starting off, maybe with the teacher, right? Because we don't want to
Mm.
overstep, the teacher. She's the one that he or she is the one that work with this child in various settings in the school system, daily, several hours per day. So I think reaching out to the teacher And then ultimately, the teacher, depending on how you approach that as a private BCBA, that teacher, depending on what kind of a relationship you will you establish early on, that teacher will be an advocate for ABA services. And so they'll
Mm,
go on to their special ed administrators and ultimately to some of the special ed directors. And it's like, hey, this training sounds great. I think not only me and my staff would benefit from it, but I think there are other special ed teachers that could benefit from it as well. So I think that's maybe reaching out to the teacher first
mm.
and establishing that relationship as the first point of contact is maybe a way to do that.
ABA practice owners, are billing and insurance issues getting you down? Well, let me tell you, Element RCM is your answer. Element provides world-class revenue cycle management services, contracting, credentialing, authorizations, billing, and more. Element's your partner, so you can focus on what you love to do, providing the highest quality services to your families and clients. Element's a preferred partner of the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and its founders have nearly 20 years of experience owning and operating successful ABA organizations. They understand you. They know that every dollar counts, that integrity is everything. Element works with any practice management system, and Element's not a vendor, they're your partner. So find out more and take a free revenue cycle assessment at elementrcm.ai. Mm-hmm. You're an army of one, an independent practitioner. And that is, you don't necessarily have a whole bunch of team members and other BCBAs and RBTs that work for you. And so a lot of listeners of the show are independent practitioners like you. Tell me a little bit more, like how, like over the years, have you marketed your services and talked to the community about what you do?
Yeah, I think, when I got here to San Antonio after leaving the Dallas area, it was around 2006. I tried to find a school-based job as a BCBA. I was already certified and had been doing that for a few years, but there weren't any available. So I was able to contract with a couple of providers down here. There were only two providers, I think, and there was only one BCBA in San Antonio. I just came at the right time. And what I started realizing after, leaning on the coattails of a couple of those providers that I contracted with and learning from them is that, okay, I need to start, myself. I was just a contractor, not employee. I said, okay, I'm getting some nice hours here, but I really, could use a few more hours to sustain a living here, especially with a family and so forth. So I started reaching out to nonprofit organizations, and we've got a couple of big nonprofit organizations here, and one of them already had an autism program. So I just communicated with them, the autism specialist at that nonprofit. I said, hey, do you have any opportunities? They were conducting parent training, and
Mm,
I just said, do you have any opportunities for us to talk about ABA? Just go in there and present to the families. Back then, once again, there weren't many ABA providers, and so families had heard of it. They had begun to heard about ABA and its effectiveness and potential effectiveness for their children with autism. So that was one. I got on the circuit, so to speak. So their parent training class, I think it was 6 to 8 sessions, and it was anything from behavior to ABA. But a lot of the school-based, navigating the school system was one of them. Also, they talked about resources and things like that, right? So I became part of a circuit role. I was able to provide and talk about ABA every class that they had, or every 6 week, 8 week class that they ran for parents. And so that was definitely one way to that I marketed myself. And lo and behold, I had parents, contacting me saying, "Hey, how do we get this funded? Where's the funding source for this? I like what you were talking about and so forth. How can we get this?" Or in some cases, parents said, "Hey, my school needs to learn about what you're doing about ABA. Can you go speak to the school?" So that one contact there led to many others. And before you know it, I was also presenting information about ABA for related services clinics, speech,
mm,
OT, physical therapy. How do you get a kid to cooperate with your therapy and so forth. So I made the rounds doing that as well. But it all started with reaching out. And of course, I also reached out. Actually, a prominent pediatrician heard that I was in town, I guess, after the nonprofit workshops. Parents went back to their pediatrician and say, hey, there's this guy, BCBA, he's providing these services. So one of the pediatricians called me in for a meeting and say, I can refer a lot of kids to you. What do you do? And how effective are you and so forth? And how is that done? So that one opportunity created a lot of opportunities. It just kind of snowballed from just reaching out to a nonprofit, and ultimately I worked for other nonprofits as well, and gaining some experiences there. The whole idea, I was fresh out of grad school. I wanted to disseminate our field. I was so psyched about what we did, and I realized, man, there's nothing here in San Antonio when I got here. But I really wanted to disseminate our field to the families and other people, and that could benefit from what we did. So that was hugely motivating for me.
Wow, there's this book by Dr. Robert Cialdini called The Psychology of Persuasion, and it's a phenomenal book, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a community outreach, whether you're a BCBA an independent practitioner. But one of the things that I took away from that book, very similar to what you described, is this idea that don't when you meet someone for the first time to try to pitch your services or to try to do whatever you're going to do, don't have it be on your terms. Go to them first and see how you can serve them, how you can help them. Go they are. And that creates this phenomenally strong psychological motivation then that they will have to then return the favor. And then, as you've described, you go out and kick butt doing amazing parent trainings, and word gets out, it just snowballs. But I think that's really powerful, right? Meet people where they are, and don't let them hear from you first when you're asking for something. Make that be the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that, man. That is the way to do it. And in fact, what I tell my, try to indicate to my supervisees, my trainees that come into the school system, it's like, hey, listen first to their concerns, but demonstrate for them what we can do. And we did this, with one of my trainees, did a fabulous job at the end of the semester. We got a new kid come in, and we needed some supports. Well, I was supporting other kids in the district, but she was a trainee. She had experience in the schools, and she wanted to learn how to do this. It's like, all right, cool. I think within a week or two, we had the administrators asking, what is it that you guys are doing? How do you do that? Can we follow you around? Can you train our staff? It's demonstrating, right? Demonstrating first, then saying, then dictating what to do. It's like, no, I'm going to demonstrate first when I work with this kid, this student. So I think that goes along, the lines of what you were just saying. Yeah.
I love it. Demonstrate, right? Like the show, don't tell. I refer to this informally as the put. Don't use the push. Use a pull, right? Don't push AB on someone. No, have them see it, and then they're like, "What? Wow, what is that? I want to learn more." Pull them into your orbit. I love it, Lupe.
Yeah.
But there's in our field right now, there's just a lot of one-way dialogue that seems to be happening. As much as I've seen, I mean, there are phenomenal people like you out there collaborating, but there's a lot of one-way dialogue too. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think as we, some of the emphasis on collaboration, compassionate care, I think that's been in the field for a few years now, and it's only becoming more apparent, right? There's some great work out there by some of the leaders in our field about how we should play nice, basically, with others, right? But I was looking looking through some of my previous slides from way back on my first school district. I'm talking about 2002, 2003. But what was happening even back then? I saw some slides. The first 2 or 3 slides were myths and misconceptions about ABAs. That was happening in the early 2000s, right? And I'm not certain if that's what you were asking about. So even back then, our field was receiving some criticism, and of course there is a loud a voice, advocacy, rightfully so, right? Rightfully so in that. But those advocates are responsible. A lot of those advocates, and especially the parent advocates, are responsible for our field growing the way it was. So we need to listen to what's going on right now, right? But talking about the one-sided conversations, are you referring to from us, from the
Well, no,
BCBA?
no, actually more like there's stuff around private equity and like the good and the bad of
Right,
for-profits or nonprofits, or there's,
right.
large or small providers, or, I mean, there's just a whole variety of things where I don't, you said an important word there, which is listen, right?
Right.
Like it feels like there's less, and clearly social media doesn't
Yeah.
help this. There's less listening happening in our fields. And, I don't know, maybe I'm overly sensitive to that.
You know, I certainly get that, and I've been reading a lot about that. I came back from vacation in June. I was out for a week, and I come back, and then I started reading my LinkedIn posts about layoffs and private equity and
Mm.
so forth. I knew that that was occurring over the years and so forth, but uh, I said, what is happening? What's happening in the field? At first I was like, oh no, what's this? But I, you know, I'm kind of neutral in that regard. I think that it can be done. I think that there is a purpose. There's if we have goal oriented, value oriented services, right? If that whether you are funded by private equity or whether you're a small to medium mom and pop shop, I think that those services can be provided ethically, and we've also heard unethically as well, right? And
Mhm,
even
mhm,
it's not just to me, it's not just those that are funded by private equity, but it is a concern, I think, with growth. Okay, with the rapid growth, maybe that's what we need to look at. Whether you are, a private provider and want to grow your company, I learned this the hard way myself. In my company years ago, uh, if you don't have the basics, the foundations, the systems in place, you're going to get in trouble real quick, right? So, and then that may affect the quality of your services. So I'm glad this is occurring. This conversation is open, but I do think that we need to be objective about this. Let's look at the data, right? I
mm,
know the biggest, what's getting a lot of news right now is the big companies that have had massive layoffs, cut services, abruptly and so forth. But let's take a look around. What are some of the others that are funded by private equity or what have you that are doing some wonderful work, expanding our services and so forth? But I know lots of colleagues here in town that are maintaining, and they have maintained their private practices for years, well over a decade in many cases. So they are doing something right. Families keep coming back to them, right? So I think we need to take a look at some of those guys, of the
mm,
small business owners to the medium sized private business owners. What are they doing right? And maybe that's a lesson for all of us to learn, right? I mean, it's
mm,
even the same thing from a private practitioner, solo provider like myself. I also have to be sure that I am providing adequate, effective, values-based services, because I can easily go astray, right? Anybody like ourselves. So
mhm.
I don't want to, and I don't want to just put the blame on uh, any one organization or what have you.
I so well said. I mean, you sound like a behavior analyst, dude.
Right.
Pinpoint and let's look at the freaking data, right?
Yes.
And let's figure it out. And speaking of which, like, I mean, what if we were to zoom out to like a 10,000-foot level and just look at the environment that our field is in right now? You mentioned this idea of value-based care, right? Paying for outcomes instead of paying for hours. If a
Right.
contingency is we're going to get however much money for every dollar of service or for every hour of service we deliver, what's going to happen? That shapes a behavior to bill more hours of service. And that's where it
Right.
feels like we have an opportunity to self-examine as a field and figure out a way we get to a point where we are paying for value, where payers are paying for value,
Right. Right.
as opposed to
And I
hours.
would love to see some examples. I think there are some that will be coming out soon, is what I've heard on, I don't know if it was your podcast or maybe one of the others, but I'd love to see some examples of that,
Yeah.
and then hey, maybe we start off with those of us who are private practitioners, solo practitioners. Maybe that's the way, and maybe we can help lead that after we get some
Mm.
examples and some guidance, right?
Powerful. You're
Yeah,
exactly right. The BHCOE has its outcomes framework. It's
there you
published.
go.
ICHOM has its autism standard set. So there's stuff emerging, right? But
Right.
so Lupe, like look forward with me. 5 years from now, how is our field going to look different?
I think that we are, potentially after all of this settles down, after we look at the data, all of these, I think that we're going to be in a better position. We just have to have these conversations. We can't take one side or another. We have to look at this objectively. I do see I do see us, as a field learning from these issues that are occurring right now. And I would hope that we begin to, and we hear this all the time, disseminate. Let's look at fields other than autism, but we know that is such high demand right there too. How can I provide services to other fields as well? And that's what I want to help with the remainder of my career, hopefully 15 to 20 more years, right? I want to be able to disseminate that. But I do see us progressing from where we're at. As long as we don't put our head in the sand, so to speak, right? And we are listening and we are discussing these objectively and avoid taking a side, I think that we will continue to grow and hopefully provide some adequate services. I know that the BACB is already looking ahead at training, right? Increasing the training requirements and for future BCBAs. And I think that's a step in the right direction. So I think we're going to be in a better place. We do have to address those criticisms, though, uh, from those advocates. The
Mhm.
autistic adults. We do have to listen. What are they saying? What is it that Why are they saying this? And what have their experiences been? I think we have to listen to that and take that into account as a field.
Hmm. Well said. What's the one thing, Lupe, that every ABA practice owner should start doing and one thing they should stop doing?
I'm going to start off with stop doing. I know that there are providers, thousands of providers that are doing some wonderful work, but stop trying to do everything yourself. Okay.
Mm,
And along with that, and I learned the hard way, in my early practice. Stop, it's okay. So start delegating, right? You want to delegate to others, to hire the personnel. And now we've got your podcast, we've got other similar podcasts, we've got Facebook groups, on ABA businesses, collaboratives, and so forth. There are resources out there for you. So I would like for you to reach out. I would hope that you can reach out, especially if you're considering private practice. Reach out to others who have been in your shoes, but be okay with hiring someone that is going to be fundamental to your business, fundamental to your future growth. And I would say start and continue learning these systems approaches, OBM. I've only recently begun to read that literature, and it is so powerful, even within the school settings. So don't try to do everything yourself. Do collaborate and do delegate and do continue learning about our field and its applications across various populations.
heck yes, man. Well said. Lupe, where can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, Lupe Castañeda. I also have a website, learnwithaba.com. And, or, if you want to, you can email me through there, contact me through there. But my email is Lupe, Lupe, at learnwithaba.com.
Love it. All right. Are you ready for the hot take questions?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Lupe, you're on your deathbed. What's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
Aside from family, I think everybody says family, right? That is so rich. That is so powerful for us. But I want to be remembered for reaching across the aisle, so to speak, right? For collaborating with others, for disseminating with others. I keep saying that, but I think it's so important. I want to play nice with other fields. I want to be remembered for that. Hey, Lupe was the one that really brought ABA and so forth to San Antonio or to wherever I'm at and so forth. And I think that that's going to be a long-term goal. I've got continue to try to reach out to others, whether it be school districts, whether it be other providers, whether it be related services providers, and so forth. So
Mm.
that's what I want to be remembered for.
What's your most important self-care practice?
Outdoors, man. During COVID, I've always been a beach bum. I grew up down in South Texas and things like that. Shorts and t-shirts, man, and sandals. That was my attire for years growing up there. So I've kind of taken that on. But during COVID, of course, during quarantine, we discovered the outdoors again. It's like, oh man, I miss this. So self-care, getting out, getting some of that sunshine. My wife and I, and even one of my kids, will go out frequently. We try to frequent a break about every a lake, actually, about every couple of weeks down here, a local lake. I discovered kayaking too. I love that, man.
Mm.
I love that. I do fishing while I'm on the kayak. I'm not a good fisherman. I just throw it out there. It's just, hey, I'm cool. That's my zen right there. But of course, we talk about sleep, but I also like, especially at my age, as I get older, resistance training. I've got to keep resistance training,
Mm.
because we do have to be energetic working with some of the kiddos that we work with, kiddos and adolescents and adults in some cases, right? But that, I think, is a key also to longevity, is the sleep, resistant training, especially at my age as I get to get older.
Nice. What's your favorite song?
Oh, I thought about this, man. I listen to every genre, anything from 80s to 70s to Tejano, man, to Spanish music. But right now, that's been on my mind, and this is an older song, is Yellow by Coldplay. I love that. It's been in my head these
Oh,
last couple of weeks. And then, of course, this is how varied my listening is. Tim McGraw, it's your love. Tim McGraw, country is like, what? But I'll listen to anything. But those two I've been listening to a lot of, especially on camping trips, man. So that getting out there in the outdoors and just jamming and being on the water, that's cool.
dude, so I am right there with you. Every genre of music is a beautiful genre,
Yeah.
and I will listen to it all. Coldplay, that brings back memories of the 90s. Not only because isn't their lead singer married to Madonna, who was like, oh, was like no, maybe
Yeah.
that was maybe Bush's lead singer. Maybe I'm mixing my bands or metaphors. But
Oh, yeah.
Coldplay, was it No Teardrops from a Waterfall and Vida La Vida, like, are two of my
Oh,
when I
really?
want happy music, that's what I plug in. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah. Oh, the Counting Crows, man. You got to go. I saw these guys, and back before they were famous in San Antonio, they're just walking around some small venue during their breaks. Those
Ugh.
guys, I love just about every song from the Counting Crows. I mean, I'm dating myself. That's back in the 90s, but it's good stuff, man.
Heck yeah, it is. Well, if you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, Lupe, what would it be?
Slow down, set some
Mm,
goals, slow
mm,
down, and set some goals, earlier than waiting until, into your 20s. That's what I would say.
mm. All right. You can only wear one style of footwear. What would it be?
I've been through the gamut. I told you that I was a beach bum, liked a lot of footwear, sandals and so forth. Right now, when I go out camping, which we do hiking and then of course kayaking, Keen sandals,
Mm,
closed toe Keen. I love those things. They'll last for years, man. Also, right now, I just wear clogs around the house. They are so comfortable to slip on. So I'll use, just various types of slippers, so to speak. I mean, they're outdoor slippers without a back strap or something. But those are so comfortable for me. I can get in and out of those. But if I'm outdoors, it's going to be my Keen sandals.
heck yes. Hey, Lupe, thank you so much for all you're doing for our field and collaborating, for sharing your wisdom. This has been awesome, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jonathan. Thanks, and I hope that that we'll continue to grow as a field and learn, as we continue to expand.
What up, listeners? Hey, I got something for you. If you like my Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast, you're going to love the Behavioral Observations podcast with Matt Sikoria. So I recently met Matt at ABAI, and let me tell you, I was just an instant fanboy. Matt's the real deal. His pod is all about stimulating talk for today's behavior analysts. So session 191 on his pod is on the behavior analysis of lying. That's right, lying. How awesome is that? Who does that? He also talks social skills, ACT, FAs, and so much more. His guests include Greg Hanley, Jonathan Tarbox, and other legendary names in our field. And as a BCBA, you can even get CEU credits. through behavioral observations. You can find Matt and the Behavioral Observations podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast channel. Enjoy, friends.
Thanks for listening to Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We value your feedback. Don't forget to follow us on social media at elementrcm.ai.